Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Scheidegger Center. My name is Sebastian Boots, the Director of Bands at Lindenwood, and we have a very special evening for you, combining forces with the St. Charles County Symphony Orchestra, led by Maestro David Peak, whom I will introduce here shortly. I've had the pleasure of working with this group for the past year and a half or so in various capacities, and it was really an amazing collaboration that we got to put together with our string students here at Lindenwood this year with this orchestra. So we've been rehearsing with them as we have a few students from Lindenwood in the orchestra tonight, and it's just been an awesome collaboration that we've been able to put together. And the St. Charles County Orchestra, for those of you that may not know, is a nonprofit organization in St. Louis. It's been around for 20 plus years, and they perform at venues all over the county and reach diverse audiences. And it's really remarkable and amazing that we have this special orchestra here in this county. So I encourage you to check out their website, St. Charles County Symphony's website, for future performances. They have a patriotic concert that will come up in about a month, June 29th, at First Baptist Church of St. Charles, right down the road. And check out the program too. There's like I mentioned, it's a nonprofit organization, and so they do fundraise for all of their music and everything they do, and including scholarships. They've been very generous to provide students in our orchestra a scholarship. So if you feel led to support their cause, there's a QR code in the program that you could check out to make a gift, a tax-deductible gift. And so, yeah, we're going to open the program with them, and then we will have a brief intermission, at which point we'll reset the stage for about 10 minutes for our wind ensemble to come on. So, without further ado, please help me welcome Maestro David Peak.
We've had the pleasure to partner with area high schools and the students from Lindenwood this year in presenting concerts throughout the season in different locations, and we're very proud of their contribution to the orchestra. Will those students who are playing with us please stand? And of course, to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do, we have Sebastian, who's been very gracious in being a part of our family, and he's going to conduct the next piece for you, the Mussorgsky Pictures in an Exhibition.
Thank you. Before I begin the next piece, I thought I'd explain it a little bit. There's some French subtitles. So this is called Pictures at an Exhibition. It was originally written for piano, piano solo, and by a composer named Modest Mussorgsky, a Russian composer, and French composer Ravel came along several years later and transcribed it for orchestra, which it's really cool. Just the colors that evoke this piece. Imagining how it used to be for piano and then coming to orchestra is really cool. But it was inspired by a lot of artwork at an exhibition. And so each movement, there's 10 movements in this work. We're playing the last two, movements 9 and 10. Each movement is inspired by a different piece of art. And the movements that we're gonna play for you today is the Chicken Hut of Baba Yaga, which is a witch in Russian folklore. And so there's this wicked picture of this witch in her hut over chicken legs, and it's very creepy and interesting, and I think you'll hear that very strange and aggressive part of that picture in this first movement. And then it goes straight in to this very grandiose fanfare called the Great Gate of Kiev. And yeah, you'll hear it seamlessly go into this brass fanfare at the end. It's very noble and just beautiful. So we had the pleasure of performing this on our Halloween concert back in October at the St. Charles Cultural Arts Center. We were all dressed in costumes, and it was just a lot of fun. So we're excited to bring it back for this performance here, and I hope you enjoy Pictures at an Exhibition. Please welcome back to the stage Maestro Peak to lead West Side Story. We're going to take about a 10-15 minute intermission to reset the stage for the wind ensemble. In the meantime, you're welcome to use the facilities or walk around. Just try to be back in your seats in about 10 minutes. I'd also encourage you once more to look at your program if you're interested in making a gift to this organization and supporting the classical music that they bring to the community. There's a QR code on about the 5th page, and your phone camera will bring you right to the website for that. So thanks again for being here. We hope you enjoy the second half with Lindenwood's Wind Ensemble. Well, thank you and welcome back to our second half with the Lindenwood Wind Ensemble. Y'all can have a seat. I just want to introduce the repertoire. You might see some familiar pieces on this, some familiar names, The Lord of the Rings, Shrek, maybe a less familiar, Rift and Wed, and Harry Potter. So there is a theme to this portion of our concert. Next week, we are joining with a couple different bands for a Pops concert, which will take place in Washington, Missouri Fairgrounds. We're going to do this concert with East Central Community College and SLU, St. Louis University, and Washington High School. And every year they do a concert, Pops concert, with a different theme in the park in Washington, Missouri, about an hour from here. And so I got to know the band directors a little bit, and we planned this little collaboration. So I'm excited for Lindenwood to be a part of that. And so as a warm-up to that, we are going to perform a portion of that concert for you all today. There's going to be more tunes next week. So if you're interested, Friday, is it, 6 p.m., Hannah? No, that's when the time. 6 p.m., thank you. 6 p.m. on Friday, May 9th. Washington Fairgrounds, if you want to look it up. So yeah, the theme this year is dragons, and so every piece that we are playing has a theme of dragons implemented with that. So you know the first two tunes. I'll come back and introduce the third tune when we get there. So enjoy Lord of the Rings. This one has a little bit of a program note. So this is not from a movie, Riften Wed, but it's actually from a video game that engages a lot of dragons and magical kingdom type things. Riften is the city in Skyrim, located in the expansive world of Elder Scrolls, the 5th installment of an action role-playing video game saga developed by Bethesda Game Studios. So perhaps some of you are familiar with this. The composer describes Skyrim as a beautiful world from mountainous snowy regions to open tundra plains, sea coasts, beaches, thick woods, lakes, and hot spring-fed swamps. Large cities, villages, forts, ancient ruins, caves, lone houses, sawmills, and abandoned shacks dot the atlas. One can spend hours just walking or riding horseback from one side of the continent to the other, doing nothing but experiencing the wondrous environment and lore. So it's a really beautiful place. However, it's also a very chaotic and gruesome and deadly world, torn apart through a civil war with dragons who have resurfaced after thousands of years, and they are threatening to take over the world. And this is also the city, with all of the civil war and chaos that's going on, that people must go to get married, hence the wed portion of this, the wedding. And it's all about how death till death do us part, because that is inevitable in this video game. And apparently if you die in the video game, you cannot get remarried. And so it's just an interesting part of this. Riften Wed is the music for loves and unions, past and present, such as this. A love, a wedding, a lifetime shared by two people in the middle of a storm that threatens to tear them apart, where death do us part is not only a reality, but a given. So we hope you enjoy this dragonous video game, Riften Wed. Well, this is our final concert in this stage. Again, you're welcome to join us next week. But I wanted to shout out a couple of our amazing seniors that are graduating. We'll start with Brianna Dickey in our percussion section. She's a criminology major graduating this season. Right in front of Brianna, we have Daniel Evans on trombone, game design major. Let's see, Joseph Smith on alto saxophone with a mathematics major. And last but certainly not least, Margaret Doltz on oboe and English horn. We're so thankful and that you all made it out tonight to support the St. Charles County Symphony and the Lindenwood Wind Ensemble. We hope you enjoy our last, you might have heard of it, Harry Potter. Thank you all. Come see us May 9th in the Washington Town Park. There'll be food trucks. It's all outside. It'll be a fun community event. That's at 6 p.m. May 9th. Come see the St. Charles Symphony again at First Baptist Church June 29th for their patriotic concert. And yeah, we hope you have a terrific evening. Thanks for being here.